Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie here at First United Methodist, and I'm glad you could join me. I'm going to start off with a few housekeeping things, and then we will move on to the topic for the day. So we have launched our Living Light modern worship service. That's Sunday night at 5:30. It's a simplified service, and I'd love to have you come if you are someone who Sunday mornings maybe doesn't work for you, or you tend to be traveling and are coming back. If you're unable to make it to Sunday morning service, Sunday night service is a great option. If you know people who just haven't really plugged in anywhere, I'd really encourage you to say, hey, would you want to come check out this new thing with me? And it's maybe a slightly shorter service. It's the feedback that I got after our first service was we really felt like it was very personal, that it was a very calming presence, that it was very, that they walked away feeling peaceful and filled, and I think those are all good things. And so if that's something that sounds interesting to you or someone you might know, send them a link on Facebook to our Living Light page, send them to our website. We would love to have anybody come check it out who's looking for a different type of service from us or a church home that maybe they don't have yet. That is our hope and our prayer with adding this service in, is to give more opportunity for people to find a place to belong. Looking ahead, this coming Tuesday, we're going to be starting a new Tuesday lunch study. We just finished up doing a series on the Psalms, which was really fun. And now we're going to be doing a series called To Be Made Well. And it is looking at healing stories in the Gospels, healing stories of Jesus. And what's kind of fun about this one, we're using Amplify Media again, which is an online resource that we have through Cokesbury, which is our United Methodist publishing house. And the series is actually put together by people right here in the Dakotas Conference of the United Methodist Church. And so if you are someone who maybe has been to annual conference, or you know some people around the conference, you might recognize some of the faces on the videos because they're all going to be local people. And so I'm really excited about that, to share that with you. That is going to run for 6 lessons. There is going to be one Tuesday we'll be off. And so again, that is going to become when you can. Even if you make it to one, we'd still be happy to have you come and join us. It's a really fun, relaxed group. You can bring your lunch if you want to. It usually is just an hour, and there is no homework for that. We are going to be wrapping up our Sunday morning class on the 10 Commandments, and I haven't decided yet what we're going to follow that up with. And so I will let you know as soon as I know. But I don't know yet because I haven't turned my attention to it just yet. I'm looking around. Here it is. For Pastor Book Club for the month of March, we're going to be doing this book called Fear of the Other by Will Willimon. The bottom of it says no fear in love. So this book isn't teaching you how to fear the other. It is actually suggesting that we are not meant to fear the other. It is a short, small book. Will Willimon is a professor at Duke University Divinity School. He's also, I think, been a bishop in the United Methodist Church. Don't quote me on that. But very well known. Oh, retired bishop of the North Alabama Conference. Okay, do quote me on that. I was right. But this will be our book for March. And so if you're interested, there's many ways and places you can get this, including Kindle online. So just wanted you to be aware of that. So this week I've been out of the office, and this was the last of my trips prior to annual conference. This time I was helping to run our Clergy Leadership Academy. And so let me maybe just share a little bit about what that was. And then the topic for today is coming out of my time there. So Clergy Leadership Academy is, we offer it twice a year. Our clergy that are in process, and what we mean by that are clergy who have been commissioned at annual conference as either elders or deacons, are required to attend these. They need to attend at least 6 of them in their provisional time. So that's 2 a year. Provisional is a minimum of 3 years in our conference, a maximum of 8 years. But we also open it up to local licensed pastors as a continuing education opportunity. And so we have a mix of both, which is really awesome. And it's meant to be one, continuing education, two, a time for connection among clergy. It's a time to really um, get to know one another, because when you are the only clergy person, um, and United Methodist clergy person in a town, sometimes it can feel isolating. So it's good for us to have good connection with each other. And it's also a time to learn from one another. And so I am a part of that because of my role on the Board of Ordained Ministry. The board is responsible for that event because of the requirement for those in process with us. And so I'm on the planning side of it. And then also this time it was my turn to be the host for it. And so that is what I was doing. We also rotate where we host it. And so this time it was out at Storm Mountain Center, one of our United Methodist camps, which the people in the Black Hills loved because, frankly, almost every conference event is not in the Black Hills. And so they are always driving an insane amount of miles to go to anything conference related. And so they really appreciated having something in their backyard for a change and having the rest of us come out to them. Uh, and I can understand and appreciate that. So, plus it was the best food ever. It was so good. If you are thinking about going to church camp, one, you cannot go wrong with any of our 3 United Methodist camps, which we're going to be promoting camps this month. March 22nd is going to be the day that we want you to wear your camp clothes and things like that to church. But I want to give a little plug for the food out at Storm Mountain. I was very impressed, very impressed. And so just a little plug that if you haven't gone out there, one, it's beautiful, and two, great, great food. Now, I mean, my heart is always going to be at Lake Ponset. That's my other home, but uh, I'm going to put a pretty strong plug for Storm Mountain for that reason in particular. So this particular event is always around some sort of theme that pastors need, that we need to talk about, that we need to lift up, that we need to be growing in. And we really wanted to focus on pastoral care. And as we were looking at our resources and who we wanted to bring in, it really kind of settled around pastoral care at end of life type of situations. Now that included a session on um, suicide. Um, and so we had one of our clergy colleagues in the conference talk about QPR, which is, if you know of CPR, what we use when someone is in a life-threatening situation, where you're pumping on their heart. QPR is meant to sound sort of similar to that, but it's question, persuade, and refer. And it's just training on what to do if you are with someone or encounter someone who is suicidal, who is having those thoughts or being afraid of being a danger to themselves. And so we started off with that, which was pretty, I mean, the whole time was heavy, but that was just like, let's dive in the deep end. But it's something that you think you'll never encounter, and that's just not the case. Um, and I just want to name that it's more prevalent than you think it is. And when I was first in ministry in Mitchell, I was a part of the Davison County Suicide Prevention Task Force. And why that was so important to me at the time is I lost a cousin to that. And that was the first funeral I ever did in ministry, was for him. Um, and what I learned in that process is, again, how to take away the stigma of talking about it. Sometimes we think that if we talk about it, we are giving permission or introducing the idea, and that's just not the case. the thing that really shocked me then and still shocks me today is how young a person can be and begin to have these sort of thoughts or beliefs about themselves that this is the only option for them. And so really useful practical things, and clergy can be a part of the solution and being a safe place for people. So that was one of our topics that we talked about. One of them was around hospice care, and we have clergy colleagues who are in extension ministry as hospice chaplains. And I'm going to come back to that one because that's the one I really want to talk about the most today. And then we also have a clergy colleague who's in extension ministry in a funeral home and is a funeral director, and talked about that whole process of working with families and as pastors come in. And, we have a really unique role. And so it was really practical in sharing from that perspective, and then also sharing wisdom in the room with each other. We have new clergy, we have experienced clergy, and we all have stories and things that we can learn from one another. So it was an incredibly wonderful, rich experience, uh, and one that is not always easy to kind of bring up. But I want to go back to the hospice one in particular, because not only I think was it useful for pastors, but I think there's a lot that can be useful for all of us to understand about hospice and about end of life things, because there's only two constants in the world, right? Death and taxes, or I think it's change and death. But this is something none of us are going to avoid. And so um, I'm just going to pause for a moment before I really dive in. I know I've already kind of named some tough things, but if this is a topic that is really difficult for you, I just want you to know I'm going to be talking about this for the rest of this, and I'll put a disclaimer in the description of this video as well. But um, I think it's really important that we understand this, because not only will we go through this someday, but also our loved ones will. And so often, in my vantage point in working with families who've lost loved ones, whether it's something that they saw coming or something that they didn't, it can often be a really hard thing to face. And so if we can kind of start to familiarize ourselves with the idea and kind of what to expect, and to maybe make it a little less scary. Um, that would be my hope for you and for everyone, honestly. So we had Deanne Hardy, who is a hospice chaplain out in Rapid City, come and speak with us. And so what I'm sharing with you is some of what she shared with our group. And again, just things that I think are really helpful and practical and useful for everybody. But the first idea that she shared is death is, in and of itself, is not a tragedy. Are there deaths that are tragic? Yes, absolutely. But death in and of itself is not a tragedy. It is the completion of this life's journey. It is a natural conclusion to this life, and it is a transition to something else. And so not all deaths are tragic. And sometimes they can be a relief. Sometimes they can be a gift. And I've definitely sat with families who have felt really conflicted and feeling that way about it, that they felt relief in their loved ones passing because it was a long time coming, or relieved pain and suffering, or things like that. And in those moments, it's easy to see how death doesn't feel tragic. But death is natural. It is a part of this life. Now, this idea that she introduced to us next was very fascinating, and I've never thought about this before. And she's being trained as a death doula, which I only knew existed because of my colleagues who are doing this work. But they say that dying is like being born. Let's let that sink in for a minute, right? Dying is like being born. If you think about it, a baby would likely choose to stay where they are in the womb. And often that's how we feel, right? Before our impending, change. We want to stay where we are. This is what we know. This is comfortable. This is, um, if a baby was given a choice, it probably wouldn't choose to leave what they know. It's a huge change from one place to another, and it's kind of the start of a new journey, right? It can go quickly or it can go slowly. And we know that childbirth can do the same thing. There can be complications. It can be painful or difficult, but there's also medication that can help with those things, just like in birth. Um, and that's part of hospice care. At a birth, family and friends are often present. Um, and like a part of that, to celebrate, to be there. And that death can be that way too, that it doesn't have to be something we avoid, but something we can gather around. um and the last one, she says, our bodies, for women, I suppose is not, this one's not true for men, but like our bodies know how to give birth. When that process starts, like your body knows what to do, and it's the same actually with death. Your body knows how to die. Your body, especially, and she's talking in particular this time about like end of life, like um, old age type things, and not so much traumatic things. And so there is this new profession called a death doula, who's kind of, a doula is a person who comes and helps, like a midwife, helps to usher in the birthing process. So there are now also death doulas who, that is their job, to help people to die well. And she's training to do that, which is pretty cool. She says one of the things that's helpful for us is to understand the dying process, because we can get really freaked out. And I get this. I was present when one of my grandparents passed away, and I was in seminary at the time, but have not learned any of this kind of stuff. And frankly, they don't teach this to you in seminary either. This just comes over experience. But uh, so often, I think one of the roles that I have when I come in when someone is at end of life is just to be present, and you learn things that way. And the family, if it's the first time going through this, it can feel very terrifying because they don't know what to expect. And so I just want to briefly touch on some of these things, but I would encourage you that if this is something that, like, if you have a lot of anxiety around it, I would encourage you to learn some things to kind of help demystify. I am someone who runs anxious, and in my younger years, like I wouldn't go get my car's oil changed unless I knew ahead of time what the process was at that oil change place, because otherwise I was so afraid of screwing it up and people judging me that I wouldn't go and wouldn't get it done, and just it was too overwhelming. But if I could learn and I knew what to expect, it was a lot easier for me to face it. And so I'm just saying it from that kind of place. But again, I'm focusing right now particularly on, again, in the context of hospice, in the context of kind of end of life, not on the side of sudden and tragic. But as people's bodies start to shut down, they tend to be sleeping more. They will eat and drink less. And sometimes, especially in our part of the world, eating and drinking is one of the ways that we care for people. Like, have you eaten? Have you drank anything? That is one of our number one. And so we kind of think like, just get them to eat, just get them. But actually, what we learned was as your body's shutting down, it cannot process that. And it can be more painful um, to try to put more stuff into their body because it can't do the stuff with it. So they're going to eat and drink less. Their skin might change. Their breathing will change. There might be some pain as the body shuts down, but part of hospice is managing that. Um, One of the things that I think is really fascinating is that oftentimes people will see things. If you read our Pastor Book Club book in November, we read the book The In-Between by a hospice nurse named Hadley. And she talks about this as well, and it's quite a common thing actually. And what both Hadley and our hospice chaplain were talking about is we don't necessarily know that they're hallucinations. Oftentimes, people have visions of loved ones who have gone before, of Jesus, and who's to say that that's not real? And I am not comfortable saying that that's a hallucination. I also have that story within my own family with my grandmother when she passed. And so um, that's a normal thing. Your loved one isn't going crazy. Um, it's part of the process, oftentimes. Not everyone. And the I think one of the hardest things, and I've seen this, is the rally that someone is actively dying and then they seem to get better for a few hours. They perk up, maybe for a day, and then that's really kind of the last hurrah. Um, One of the other things that's really helpful that she talked about was it's important for us to kind of wrestle with our own beliefs and thoughts around death and around our own death, so that whenever we have the honor of being present with somebody in that stage of life, whether, me as the pastor or if we are called in as family or as even, beloved friends, that we can be present to them without our own anxieties, our own fears getting in the way. Um, to really wrestle. And I think that's a great opportunity for you to come talk to your pastor, me, or to, bring up in your Sunday school classes or small groups, to really kind of name what it is that's scary and fearful and what you could use, like when that time comes, what you would want. Um, those are all really helpful things. Um, I think another one that was really interesting that I wanted to name was, they believe that hearing is often the last of the senses to go, and so even if the person you love and are visiting are unresponsive, maybe they're not talking or it's, looking at you, doesn't mean that they can't hear you. And so talking to them, praying with them, um, even being mindful of the conversations happening around them, um, just assume that they can hear you and maybe they can take comfort in that. So, um, and don't be afraid to be present. And then the final thing is once that person has passed, one of the best ways I think to care for families and to care for your loved ones is to, especially if it was someone very dear to them, to ask about them, to share stories, to ask for stories. I think, you know, it helps them to stay alive a little bit in memory. And so I think those are really good things. So that's just some of what we learned. Also, I want to talk really briefly about hospice care itself because I think it's a little bit misunderstood and people are really hesitant. But basically, hospice is caring for someone at end of life. And to qualify for hospice, a doctor needs to diagnose you with something that the odds are for, life expectancy 6 months or less. Um, and they'll do like a words are hard evaluation. That's the word I was looking for. And then, and people can come on and off of hospice. People can end up on hospice for a long time. It's not like you're giving up on the person. In fact, it's just a whole nother subset of healthcare um, and care for the person, right? And so it's just tailoring the care to what you need in this stage. And so hospice can be a wonderful gift. My grandfather went on hospice and then actually came off for a while before eventually going on hospice again and passing. And so I want you to hear that. In the conversation, some of the chaplains said they've seen people come on and off hospice multiple times. Um, so hospice will get now. Some hospice companies have a hospice house that people can be in. Oftentimes they can go to your home, so it's an option for you to be able to be at home, which can be really nice and comforting. It's often around pain management. So helping you be as comfortable as you can be. So there's hospice nurses that visit and assess, physically what needs They have social workers, so if you qualify for benefits, especially if you are a veteran, there's a lot of programs out there. And so hospice connects you with a social worker that can help with those things. And then hospice also has chaplains, and that they come to help with kind of those spiritual needs, but also if you are not a believer, to just be present and to listen and to help process um, what you're going through, and to help usher in that time in a dignified way. And so I've been really impressed with the experiences that my loved ones have had with hospice. It's something that I think is, if you know that that's kind of where you're headed, and the medical professionals suggest it, um, my personal opinion is, if you qualify, it is a wonderful gift to you and to your family. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It just means it's a different kind of care, and probably the kind of care you need at that time. So, and sometimes, just the attentiveness to hospice helps a person get what they need and they perk up. And like I said, my grandfather was one of those for a while. But also, I very much believe in those times that, and believe to this day that him going on hospice when he did allowed that to happen. And had he not, um, that probably wouldn't have happened. And so sometimes hospice can be the thing that extends your life, or at least extends the quality of your life, which I think is important toward the end. Um, so now you have a little bit of what I was doing this week and a little bit of the knowledge that I gained. Again, so much of it is just learning from one another. And one of the things I loved is all the speakers we had come in were part of our conference, were people that we knew were doing kind of work in these areas, and to be able to have them be the resources and to learn from them and to let them offer what they know and what they have learned, so that all of us can be better. I think it's such a cool thing, and it's one of our connectional things as United Methodists that is a blessing. So I'm really grateful for that. Also, just a reminder that we do have coming up soon our Core giving, which is one of our special giving Sundays, another piece of our connectional system. And that's a really popular one because that giving helps to make it to cover all the administrative costs, so that when people give to UMCOR for specific humanitarian needs, 100% of those gifts go right to the need. And we, as United Methodists, cover the cost of the administration through this offering, instead of skimming off the top, which I think is a much better route. So I hope that was interesting to you. If you want to know more, if you want to talk to me about end of life things, or maybe you're thinking about planning ahead for your funeral, which I 100% believe you should be doing, please come talk to me, meet with me. I'd be happy to walk through what that looks like, and to help you get your wants and wishes for that service planned out and ready to go. That is such a gift you can give to your loved ones, so that in the midst of grief, they're not having to try to figure those things out. So please know that it does not bother me at all to talk about end of life. Um, I was visiting with someone. My grandfather was a funeral director, and my mother very much raised me to see death as a part of life, and to not be afraid of it. And maybe that has suited me well for the role that I've taken on in my life. But I've always kind of joked that if I wasn't a pastor, or maybe in retirement, that I would volunteer at a funeral home, because um, it's a privilege to get to walk with families in that way. And not everyone is cut out to do it. But in my life, that has been an area that I've been blessed to be able to serve. So, all right, until next time, God bless, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Going On, a video and audio podcast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. We'd love to have you join us for worship on Sundays at 10 a.m., either in person or via our live stream, which can be found at our website, www.firstumcyankton.org, or by searching First UMC Yankton on YouTube.